In this episode, I talked to Alex Garcia, the founder of Marketing Examined. Simply put, Alex is going after Harvard Business Review. He's trying to be the future of business content mixed with a complex media streetwear feel. The conversation was a masterclass for brands and creators about how to use organic content better to grow your business. We talked through the viewer to follower to fan to superfan funnel, Alex's vision to build Marketing Examined into a $1 billion company, and the cheat codes that he thinks are obvious that most brands and creators are overlooking. This is Blueprint. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. All right, so what's something that you feel like you have a deep insight into? Something to you that feels like a cheat code, but you feel like most people are either missing or they haven't like closed the gap in their knowledge on yet. What comes to mind when you hear that?
So the one, I'll give a little bit of context relevant to marketing because that's the world that I dabble in, but it's this idea of the intersection of performance marketing, brand marketing, and growth marketing. So performance marketing is getting somebody to convert by all means. Doesn't matter how I do it, I'm going to get them to purchase something. Brand marketing is, in many ways, it's the opposite. I am trying to do something forever, and therefore everything I say matters. Every touch point matters. And so that's brand marketing. And then growth marketing is being able to do that across all touch points, being able to do that in email, being able to do that in SMS, on the landing pages. Where I think I've developed a skill that feels like a cheat code is the intersection of those three things, because it's like, okay, how can I talk to someone to get them to buy, but make it amazing and make it feel cohesive with the brand and the brand messaging, while also doing it across all the different touch points with email, SMS, and landing pages. And so having worked at jobs and worked with different clients that I've had to do all three, I've been able to develop a skill where, okay, how do I build a brand and how do we build it fast? And then how do we build it right to attract the right people? And that's felt like a cheat code because a lot of times you'll work with a brand or and I could give context without saying names, but like we're working with an 8-figure brand right now. They were only focused on performance marketing, and that hinders brand marketing and growth marketing. Because growth marketing, again, is 20 different skills under the umbrella of growth marketing. Then brand marketing's how you're developing that brand over the next 10, 20 years. And so if you're only focused on performance marketing and essentially paying to get in front of people, those impressions aren't making an impression. And so then it affects how you can do brand marketing down the road, because then you're going to have to position yourself later down the road completely different to make up for the mistakes that you did via performance marketing. And then if you are intertwining growth marketing, which is, again, all the different touch points, you're sacrificing everything that you can do on the brand marketing side. So it's understanding how all three, they're not separated, but they all should live together. They should all intersect, and how you can do it right so that you're saying the right things, attracting the right people, and getting the right customers.
And that feels like that framework feels like gold. When you go a level deeper, like you're tactically actioning on it, does that look like it's the organic content you're making with certain messaging and slants to hit those boxes? Or are you thinking of it more like when you go into the 8-figure brand, when you're sitting down and you're like, all right, this is the slide one, this is the framework, the Venn diagram we're actioning on. You're using different like funnels or connection points or bridges between different types of content. Like what does that look like at a tactical level, both for how you guys are doing it for Marketing Examined, but then how you do it for other brands?
So for other brands, even for ourselves, everything should start organic and work its way up. Too many brands start with, we're going to pour all of our money into paid, then work our way down to organic. And then it's almost like two different brands talking to each other. Two different brands talking to the consumer. Because they'll have one agency working on paid, and that agency doesn't give a shit about the brand. They just care about, hey, we need to get a 2x return on spend. We need to get a 4x return on spend. So they do whatever by whatever means to get that number. Versus the actual founder or the actual brand or the content team's like, we're trying to get people to fall in love with us. We're trying to get them to follow us and then become fans of us. You fuck up the relationship there, because then you create this large pool of people, and then you target the paid team's going to target that individual because they're within your ecosystem. But then what you're targeting them with is absolute trash, right? So it's actually now going back to a deeper level of, what are we doing on the organic side that impacts the brand? What is the narrative that we are telling the world, right? What is our story? Slack had the story of we're getting rid of email. Nike has a story of you are an athlete. Represent has the story of like on a mission. How does every piece of content that we create fuel that narrative? Because then now all of our page should only continue to fuel that narrative. And then organic should also be the testing ground for paid. If something works well organically and it drives like in this case, if it's a supplement brand and you put out a good piece of organic and it's a launch video or something along those lines, then it should funnel people to the website and you should be able to see a return from that. If that works well, if the engagement is high, if the click-through rate is high, if the amount of the volume of traffic is high, all of these things are precursors to that would work well on paid. And so now you take it to your paid team and you let your paid team scale this. Hey, they work in unison, right? Versus working in silos, now the teams will work in unison. So the paid team works with the organic team to be like, hey, how can we replicate this story 10 different ways? So on the tactical level, it really works from organic and goes and works its way up to paid.
Yeah, it feels like, so one of the things that if you're watching this, you know, like my journey, and I feel like we'll get to your side on the creator piece as well. But like one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about is I'm mining for pain points. Like what are brands not good at today that we know about, where we can close the gap, right? And I keep, and you said it just there, I keep hearing this is like the third time I've heard it in the last 2 days, is like most brands, their organic content strategy, forget like short form versus long form, just in general, their organic content strategy is not dialed. Like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know where to go. And the reality is, like, from what I'm seeing, if a brand put all their effort, energy into organic and then took the best performing organic and just ran paid on it, that would accomplish everything like cohesively, right? But most brands, almost no one knows how to activate organic. So like,
nope.
There's so many ways we can take this, but who are people you're watching, like brands you're watching or that you've tapped into or that you've talked to that you feel like are many standard deviations ahead of the curve from an organic perspective that people could look to?
So there's one called Dupe. Have you heard of them?
Is Dupe that guy who's like, oh, I did this Chrome extension or like whatever you put dupe.com before and like you can find the same couch for cheaper?
Yeah, they're absolutely killing it. I think in 60 days they're at 100 and something thousand followers on a brand account. That's one. And what they do really well is like they just know how to hook people in and then integrate the product into the video. So they're really good if you want to pay attention to like how you could do top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel content all in one. They're great at it. Another one's Poor Boy Coffee. Have you seen them?
No.
Poor Boy Coffee is like the founders building the brand account through the lens of the founder. And so it's like, hey, this is day 36 of trying to bootstrap a coffee brand. And it's, you know, him at his shop, et cetera. That I really like that one because it's you're getting people to buy into the journey, into like the goals. Midday Squares is another phenomenal one.
Yeah, they crush.
Midday Squares is great because they're like, hey, we're trying to build $100 million chocolate company. We're taking on the Mars, the Hershey's of the world. Come along the ride because we're trying to be us. We're trying to essentially build a modern day Hershey's, and they're really good. Who else? Those were all like people that shoot on iPhone. Okay, so like I'll now go into someone that are more cinematic storytelling, more brand content. So Salomon Running, have you ever looked at their content? 10 out of 10, really on the brand level. Like they sell high performance shoes, therefore your content has to be high end. On Running's another really good one. The obvious one that you and I talk about a lot is Represent. They're crushing it on the organic side and on the paid side. A lot of what you see organic on their page will then be ran as paid. So I like that. A lot of the branded campaigns, you see it first on organic, then they run it as paid. Pure Sport, have you seen them?
I've seen you cover it. Yeah.
Pure Sports are another really good one, where they launch a lot of branded campaigns on social, and then they'll work them in as ads. The one that I really like is Tracksmith Running. So Tracksmith Running, one thing that they did, this added 50,000 followers within like a 3-week window, was they had this YouTube campaign that got 1.1 or 1.8 million views, one of those two numbers. And it was like this for the love of running, or amateur for the love of running, I think it was the name of the campaign. And it was like, they take amateur athletes. Their whole thing is, hey, we don't sponsor really good athletes. We sponsor the amateurs that are like on the verge of being able to go to the Olympics, but they're not that good yet. Right? Because they might be a mom, they may be a teacher, they may be like all these different things. And so what Tracksmith did is like they created a campaign around that. And then after going it out, like they crafted that story with micro stories in mind. So you create this larger narrative. And then as you film it, you think about, these are the 6 social clips we're going to get from it. Not film it, edit it, and then try to pull social. Think with social in mind. Think with organic in mind. Yes, and they did that. And so then they were able to put out 6 clips. Those 6 clips cohesively collectively drove 6 to 8 million views and added 50,000 followers, and like was a beautifully executed brand campaign. Who else?
what I'm thinking from this too. I want to jump in real quick because I feel like, so this is a question I had for you later. We're going to pull it up. You mentioned this whole idea of like, you're trying to build the funnel from like viewer to follower to fan to super fan, right? Like that, everyone wants to do that. When I hear you say these examples, and this like just popped into my head, but I think it's really helpful. All you need to get somebody through that process quickly is to get them to root for you. Like instead of defensive is like I'm being sold to, offensive is like I want to buy to help them, right? You want someone to root for you. And so like the reason why we say a lot of this like founder-led content or like midday squares, for example, like you're rooting for them to beat Hershey, and the way they're making you root for them is by showing you stuff that Hershey would never show you and like building 100%. Characters. And and that like, because I think a lot of these examples, people who are building brands starting out, they find it hard to, like it's obvious that those brands are working and they have credibility and they have momentum. They find it hard to pull like a tactical thread, but the tactical thread is how do you get someone to root for you? Like Dupe.
100%.
You're like, Dupe is showing me how to like not have to pay Wayfair prices. So like I'm rooting for them to win. I'm going to help them, right? Like 100%. What do you think about that framing?
No, I think that's the right framing. And that's what the Midday Square guys, we just had them on Cut 30. And so like one of the things that they said was like, our internal KPI has never been views. It's always been, does this content make you a fan? And then does that get you to buy in? Because your whole thing is trying to get fans, get people to root for you and come along the journey. So I do like that framing of, does this content get somebody to root for me? That's why even now with what I'm doing on the YouTube side, and again, I'm very early on this, but it's like, I'm just publicly saying my goal is to win the CrossFit Games and build a $1 billion company. We're not close to that. I'm not close to that. I still need to lose 20 pounds. We still need to make a lot of fucking money. But I'm going to just show you every bit of it. Like yesterday I was vlogging and I went to CrossFit Carhu. It's a gym right across the street from this office. And it was, look, the reality is I'm about to work with a gymnast coach who's going to teach me how to do a fucking kipping pull-up. And you're not even going to see me do a kipping pull-up. You're going to see me do the basics, the most basic shit possible, because I'm trying to learn from a specialist, not a generalist. I'm trying to learn from a specialist so that when I'm doing these movements, I'm the best at it. But to do that, you have to start somewhere. And you're about to see me in the beginning phase of learning that. And, I'm going to show that in the YouTube video because you're going to see this is the journey. This is part of it. Like when you see me compete at the CrossFit Games, it's like, wow, I watched his video when he was learning how to do that. He just cranked out 25 of them. It's a different narrative. And then go there, I guess. It's like when you launch an apparel brand, when you launch an energy drink, when you launch whatever, this person's been rooting you forever. They feel like they have to buy that. They feel like they're just part of that journey. They're part of that cult.
Exactly. And that's a perfect transition because I wanted to go to, there's so many things I want to get to, like what you're doing with Marketing Examine, you as a creator. Let's go to you as a creator, right? The first question was, what are things that you feel like you have a deep understanding on that feel like a cheat code to you that most people either haven't realized yet or realized but don't realize how impactful they are? You gave a great one for brands. Let's go on the creator side. So like you as a creator, I'm making content as a creator, you're making content as a creator. We have like this circle of 10 to 20 people that like get it, right? We're making B2B kind of content with the ambition to build huge B2B style companies. Talk me through like what comes to mind when you think of, all right, this is a cheat code. How have people not realized this is bigger yet?
I'll give two. The first one will be easy. Then the second one will be more tactical. The first one is differentiation. I'm the only B2B creator, one of the only, like in the marketing world, that probably wears streetwear, that is in the hip hop scene, the sports scene, and dresses a certain way. And that makes me and helps me stand out. And that's just me though. That's just how I am because I played sports my entire life. And now I transitioned to startups and marketing and business and all that. But like just finding what your differentiation point is. If you go into startup culture, it's very much like, damn, that guy goes to the gym. That's bro culture. But I bring over the other side of it's like bro and brains, right? Like I'm coming over here because I love building shit. But at the same time, I'm going to be in the gym 4 hours a day. I'm going to be in the gym 5 hours a day. Right. And it's a completely different world or it's a completely different thing that you're used to in the B2B world so that you could separate yourself. And the best way to win a race is to be the only one running it. Like we probably can't name like another individual that is that, right? Like they're talking marketing, but then 90% of his stories are lifting or running on the track or whatever the case may, or in fashion, dabbling in fashion. That's that's that part. Just find what is your differentiation point. That could be whatever it is. Are you into tech, but also an artist, right? Like it's just understanding what the two worlds are and then figuring out how they collide. And then how you weave what you're saying, your goal into it so that then they're rooting for you and it's now part of your journey. Then the second part, and actually I'll go back. I think there's that quote from Naval, right? That's like, you can go to a circus and if you see a bear, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's a bear. Then you go to the circus, you go to a different part of it and you see somebody on a tricycle. It's like, cool, that's somebody on a tricycle. Like it's cool for 10 seconds. Then you see a bear on a tricycle and you pull out your phone because you're like, holy shit, that's a bear on a tricycle. You want to be a bear on a tricycle. Yeah, it's one of one. I even like to go, it's one of none, right? Like nobody else could replicate this. It's one of none. What I'm trying to do, nobody can replicate because I'm the only one that can do it because it's me.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea of one of none. But yeah, that's, and then the second part that I think is a cheat code is understanding, okay, how do you build fandom? Right. And it's this idea of a media funnel. The same way people think and talk about a marketing funnel, what is a media funnel? A media funnel is understanding the different channels and their respective goals and what you can achieve, what outcomes you can achieve based on those platforms. So when I think of top of funnel, that is something that's awareness driven. That could reach 5 million people. That could reach 10 million people. You've had videos that probably reach 20 million views. That's top of funnel, right? And so those are platforms like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, YouTube Shorts. So that's top of funnel. This is where you get reach. This is how you get people to kind of buy into you or know who you are more than buy into you. This is how you get them to just see your face and know it's you. Then middle of funnel channels. And this again goes back to media, but what is a middle of funnel media channel? That is either a newsletter or YouTube. Still has distribution. You could still share it, in more so YouTube than a newsletter, but it's where you could build a deeper connection. It's like where the people there that saw you top of funnel are now like, I want more of you. Where can I get more consumption time relevant to you? That happens on YouTube and in a newsletter. Then there's bottom of funnel. This is how can this individual spend the most time with me possible? And that's something like this, a podcast, where somebody spends an hour with you. So when I think of creating my personal brand and I think about being a creator and all these things and what we're doing for Marketing Examine and how it all funnels down to the business, I think of what is our media funnel? How are we adding layers to each of these parts of the funnel so that I can just get somebody from attention to follower to fan to fandom, right? You could be a fan of something, but then fandom is that next layer of whatever you put out, I'm going to support. Whatever you put out, I'm going to buy. Whatever you do, I'm there. And you want that. And that happens. It's a hard thing to build because you have to create good content amongst all those different pieces. But if you do it, there's a lot of potential there. So
let's talk about that. Let's click into that idea of the funnel, right? Because my previous life was like business strategy, trying to like build products, but like I was not like a legacy marketer my whole life. So when I switched into this shit, I picked things up fast, but like I'm building the mental model in my mind of like, okay, shit, we need a funnel. And the way I think of it is like, imagine you're setting up dominoes. Day one, you're not going to have 10 dominoes. Like if I have to get from here to the other end of the room, you're going to set up a chain of dominoes. Ideally, you have enough dominoes where you hit the first one, it goes all the way. But when you start day one, you're not going to have all of them. So like top of funnel might be the first couple dominoes. Then you might go build something at the bottom to catch them. That's a domino at the end, but it's still not, the chain's not connected, right? And so until you have all the dominoes in place, you're not going to be able to fully knock it over. So where I started was like top of funnel, because I obviously didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, the best thing to do is get as many people in the funnel. Obviously what that ended up being is like a train that's just going off the mountain. I don't have the bridge connected. So like, then I'm like, shit. So then I start building the middle funnel. I want you to talk about where you feel like the highest leverage points are. Obviously the dream, and to get it really cooking, is to have dope content at every level that's feeding each other automatically. So you just put a little thing in the top and then bam, 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 it amplifies. You have low churn, you have high conversion all the way down. But like when people are starting out or they're trying to build these pieces separately, you can only start one place. So talk to me about how you guys are thinking through that and like where you found the biggest challenge to make it work.
I think if I could go back to what 6 months ago or a year ago when like I went full time into Marketing Examine, I would have been vlogging. That is the number one thing I would have done, because if you vlog, and if you think with short form in mind, you can, and if you do pre-production for that vlog the same way you would for a show, then you can think with short form in mind, right? And you could figure out how to create things and segment things for short form. But then you have the long form piece and you're killing two birds with one stone. It's the same way of like people think about a podcast. Hey, I can put everything out. You essentially could hit all parts of the funnel with a podcast, right? You could do the bottom of the funnel, which is the pod, and then you could chop it up for social, and then you could put it on YouTube for middle of funnel, right? So you could hit all three, but I would vlog because that is how you get somebody to root for you. And that's why I'm even doing, the build now, which I think you saw the first episode, because a lot of it will be segmented for short form. And again, it gets people to really know me and my day to day and know what I'm chasing. And they're going to see the ups and the downs, and people will fall in love with you for the downs, not the ups. And so you really want to be able to show people the downs and everything that you're going through as you try to ascend into this individual that you want to be. So vlogging, as like basic as that is, I would say start there.
I really want to start doing this because I'll give you two examples. One like dope, huge already example is this guy, Marco Terzo. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
So he takes like random objects. Yeah, look him up. He's sick. I think he has like 6 million subs on YouTube.
I can't reach, my computer's like up on a box, so I can't.
He's big now. I think he lives in San Diego. He basically makes custom sneakers. So like they could be Air Force Ones or like he makes them for celebrities. So like for example, Joe Rogan, he's like, I'm going to make a pair of shoes for Joe Rogan. So he took like an elk skin and like custom sewed the elk skin into the tongue. These are all like real custom. So what he does is the main media property is a 20 minute vlog style, like here's me making it, right? And obviously he's cutting in and out, like here's the idea, then he's like, all right, back to the workshop, we got to let the paint dry, we'll come back tomorrow. Like he's doing that, right? He's not even really, I don't think he's really maximizing vertical short form for top of funnel. Like he is cutting it and putting it on Instagram Reels, but the majority of his stuff is dropped down to YouTube. So to me, that's a very interesting, like not even a blog about his life, but it's about his craft. So I like that as a good example for like what end state could be. Beginning state, I really like what JT Barnett's doing, right? Like we're both homies with him. I don't know if you've seen what he's doing on YouTube, but it's He came
you
were on there.
He just like put his camera down. He's like, dude, this bitch is just rolling. I just got the mic on and like, this is going to be the video. I was that's
it's
cool.
very low production, but like I found myself, I was like doing something the other day and I just was letting it play. And like, again, there's something about the very like the unoptimized conversational pace of people just talking, like going about my day, like, look, here's Austin, like it's cloudy. Like you would think that wouldn't work, but it actually works really well on long form YouTube because people just want to feel one-on-one connection in that way. So I need to start doing this. My Achilles heel is that I don't love holding the phone out, filming myself in public. That's why I'm like in this fucking cave, but like it's so powerful to do.
You're getting better at it because like that's your story. Like your IG story is always so I thought about, and you take off the hat and like you say, or the glasses or whatever, like that has become your thing. But I agree with you. I mean, I think that's why people love, and honestly, like I haven't gotten into his content, but like Sam Solik, like there's a reason people love him is because it's just like he's in the kitchen cooking for 30 minutes and he's talking to you the whole time.
It's super real.
Yeah. The other person that I really like is Marcus Milioni from Minted New York.
Yeah, dude, he's
I mean, they have a full-time videographer cranking those out. But what I like about YouTube and this idea of vlogging is it increases engagement on other platforms. If somebody follows you on YouTube and they consume all your YouTube content, when you post on IG, they feel like they're the first one to reply and interact with you because most people reply to shit on IG, not YouTube.
Yeah.
And so if they can interact with you on IG, it just deepens the relationship. So I really like that. But I do think that...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just say, like, I do think people need to think about these things from the lens of, is this part of the funnel? Not just, you got to stop thinking about just creating content randomly. And you have to think about, there's this idea of discovery, then they choose to follow you and they enter your content ecosystem. And now the entire goal is fandom. So when you're creating content as well, you have to think about what attracts people, what gets them to follow, and then what makes them fans. Because that's all different content as well.
Yeah. The other thing too, I was thinking is like, when you do the longer form vlogs, the repurposing doesn't have to be like a 60-second reel, because like for Marcus Milioni, for example, he'll take a still frame photo from the thing and just post it as a story and be like, yo, the YouTube video's up. That took no extra effort, but he's able to port some percentage of Instagram followers over to YouTube. So it is like having that landing zone is key. All right, I want to get into Marketing Examined, because really I've never heard you frame the full vision. And I want to go back to like, all right, you're leaving, I think you were leaving Collective to do this, right? That was your last job. So you're leaving Collective and you're like, I want to make something work. Let's say you're starting from scratch, then it's just you. Now you've taken many steps from there. You have a team, you guys are like, have many channels in place. So I want to go through that a little bit, but then really I want to hear you paint the vision for how do you get to the $1 billion brand? And there's, before you dive into that, the question that, and I want you to keep this in the back of your mind, we'll get to it later, but just I'll plant it now. The question that a lot of people would ask you, me, is like, all right, you have all this marketing sauce, you have all this knowledge. Why wouldn't you build like a physical products brand? Or instead of going advising all those brands and going more B2B, why wouldn't you just apply all the sauce to your own brand? People ask that a lot. I want to get to that at the end, so we'll tease that now. But let's go to the Marketing Examined
Budgets
journey.
though, budgets. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Fat budgets on the
Yeah.
side. So yeah, I'll give a little bit of context where like a month before my daughter was born, it was like the inflection point for Marketing Examined of, I think at the time we were averaging like 30K a month in just ad sales. And all of that was getting like mostly reinvested back into the company. But it was that time of, okay, with 30K, if like we actually are smart about this, we could build a team, we could build a small team, right? Like we can make this work. And so I left the Collective and went full time on Marketing Examined, roughly a month before Zara was born. And then the idea is, so when was the last time you read a Harvard Business Review case study?
I try to stay away from them as much as possible.
And why do you try to stay away from them as much as possible?
Mostly because they're super sleepy, right? It's like not that interesting. And also a lot of the lessons I feel like aren't remixed and applied for like today's environment.
Right. Yeah. And it's because business content is inherently boring. It's usually very stale. In Harvard Business Review, they do 300 million in revenue while being very boring. And so there's this idea of, I want to recreate HBR 2.0, but we're going to give it a complex twist. We're going to take streetwear culture and the things that people love, and we're going to integrate it into business content. We're going to have this, because if you are HBR, there's so many people that you're never going to reach because you're painting a picture that a lot of people don't want to be painted as. And so with Marketing Examined, we're trying to build the opposite. We're trying to be cultural. We're trying to be relevant. We're trying to be somebody that is intertwined into what's hot, what's not. And so, yeah, like that was the framing from or I would say the last year. Like as we went full time, I was like, okay, how do we build this into a mega company, right? How do we build an actual culture and like wave and feeling around our company? And so it was like, who's our enemy? It's HBR. What are we going towards? What feeling are we trying to create? It's complex. And then now we're, finding our own sauce during the way. But was the next part like, how do we become a $1 billion company? Yeah, because
a lot of people like, they don't know what the vision is. So you laying that out super helpful. So now it's like the ABZ thing. Like now they know Z, and like A is today. But I think what's really interesting to someone like me, and hopefully a lot of people listening, is so tactically, in order to become the HBR 2.0 and be like the leader in business content, you need to make a shit ton of business content across like a bunch of verticals. So like you've got the shorts cooking. You obviously have the email, which is like the hub right now from a cash flow perspective. You got the YouTube show you're trying to shoot. You have your vlog. Like just talk through the content show mix and like where you think certain things will work and won't work or whatever. Because people don't really talk about the strategy. They just like, they're like, this would be cool. And they just fire it. And then they stop, right? Making these different formats. So talk me through how you guys think about it in the team.
Yeah. So from the content perspective, we are approaching it from a media funnel perspective we have top of funnel being my channels, and we'll start building the brand accounts in the next few months. Then we have the newsletter being middle of funnel, and YouTube shows that we're launching that will also be middle of funnel, and then sweat equity being bottom of the funnel. Right. So we'll have the entire media funnel. Then I'm going to have my own funnels as the founder and as like the face of it, where you're going to follow my ride on my YouTube channel, and then also what I post on social. So from a content perspective, we're essentially approaching it the way I discussed it earlier. And then what we're doing differently is what media company do you know is like the founder really is like it's founder face, like legitimately founder face, not many.
Yeah,
and if they are, they're smaller. And so if I am, let's look at a George Heaton, but if I'm doing George Heaton's kind of stuff for B2B, right, at conferences, at lifting, chasing this goal, putting it all out there, all that kind of shit, again, it's gonna attract a certain kind of people that consume our content that then we can funnel down to all of our products and services. And so right now, the way that we're monetizing the most is through ad sales, but we've started layering in other aspects. So, because I don't think you build $1 billion company on the back end of ad sales. You build it on the back end of productized services or services and other products like a community, like a paid community, paid memberships, things like that. Right. And so to build $1 billion company, you essentially have to get to like 250 million to 300 million in revenue. So what do media companies do better than anybody else? They create audiences. They're best at getting attention and retaining that attention. What are they worst at? They are worst at monetizing, because they only monetize that attention via ad sales. But what they don't understand is they build up this large audience, and New York Times is like, hey, we have 20 million people across all XYZ. But then it's like, hey, you have all of these different communities, all these different pockets of the communities that you're not monetizing because you're not creating anything for them. Instead, you're just like, hey, it's this community. Let me get this ad in front of that individual, versus this community has this problem. And I know that because they consume our content and they interact with us. Let me build this product for that individual, right? That could be a paid community. That could be a software. That could be whatever. Then the other part is, if you are in B2B, you're going to be known for knowledge. You're going to be known for putting out information. Because of that, we get to layer in different productized services relevant to our skill sets. And that's what we're doing now, which will literally change the trajectory of our company in the next 6 months, because it is, and I won't talk about it completely publicly yet, just because it's still under stealth. And but we've landed multiple 7 to 8 figure brands, some on the verge of 9 figures, and it's all relevant to the content that we're putting out and funneling it down. And now this is adding in the layer of, we'll have 50K in MRR from this one thing within another month, and then you add in ad sales, you add in community, you add in all these different things. And it's like, okay, now we're at 2-3 million in revenue. So it's not looking at it from the same lens of media company, ad sales, more eyeballs, more money. No. Eyeballs means there's pockets looking at certain things, find those things, find what they need, then build for them. We did this. We went to our audience. We scheduled multiple interviews and multiple conversations with them. We got on those conversations. What do you want? What do you need? Yada, yada. All had the same problems and pain points. We developed a productized service around that, completely changed our company. We also we're launching a paid community on the back end of that, because they want to interact with other people like them that are dealing with organic content issues like you talked about. Brands don't know how to execute it. Guess what? We're going to build a membership where they're going to learn how to do it. You don't want that, we're gonna have a productized service where we'll help you do it, basically, right? Yeah. And so now it's like this entire flywheel of content monetizing, community, and then consulting, right? In many ways.
Yeah, and I think that's like, it's funny that we're having this conversation, because like I came to the same realization in the last few weeks after talking to, like, even incidentally, right? Because I think and I'll just be like super transparent. I think what a lot of people start with is, like, I'm a creator, so I need to make stuff for creators or make products that like a consumer would buy. That's where most people think. Mostly because unless you come from like something like B2B sales, or you're like immersed in B2B, your brain is just fully torqued towards like, hey, Mr. B selling the chocolate bars, like that makes sense, right? Like that's just how your brain looks at it. But as soon as I call it like removing the governor. As soon as you in the governor, you know what the governor is, like in golf carts?
I know it because of like David Goggins. David Goggins would always talk about this.
Oh, does he say that? That's funny.
Well,
I grew up.
There's like a governor in your mind. He's like, as soon as you remove the governor, you could go past like your ceiling.
Oh, did he say that? I never heard him say that. So I grew up on a golf course, and the governor is in a golf cart. There's a lever that doesn't allow the golf cart to go past 25 miles an hour so that people don't do dumb shit. So if you take the governor off, you can go unlimited speed, or not unlimited, but you can go
literally
as fast
what he talks about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about that too. So basically, like, once you take the governor off of like, okay, I know everyone's a person, but like I am a consumer, but really I am the best way to like monetize value, if you have any sort of strategic business knowledge or interest at all, is to package that knowledge in a way that businesses can buy, period. Like it's a simple frame once you realize, but when you don't realize it, you're almost stuck in like the lower levels of like, oh, I can make t-shirts, and like all that shit is that's why I just released Wavy World for free, which is like all the knowledge. Cause I don't want to take $1 from creators. That's not where the huge TAM is. The TAM is from brands who either want to get in front of those creators or like want to learn the learning. So, and I'm just like giving the sauce away because, you know, we'll see. I think we can execute against it either way. But basically, like, I treat myself as almost like Brian Johnson of Blueprint, but from a media perspective. Like all of the content stuff I'm creating, I'm just a human experiment to learn the tactics in the trenches to then package them and sell them to brands. So it's the exact same thing you're talking about. And I'm still trying to for me, myself, like I'm still Lone Ranger. Like I'm trying to figure out exactly what to do with all that. But that it's so crystal clear to me now that like, that's where the opportunity is, huge opportunity. And from these conversations, brands don't know how to activate, forget organic content in general. Like you said, the thing you started with, that Venn diagram of like performance-based, growth-based, and organic, they don't know how to activate against it.
No,
so
not at all.
Huge
and that's where the
opportunity
dollars are, dude. And that's where the dollars are. Like, you know, you could land a 6 to 7 figure contract with a brand versus the amount of consumers you have to sell to hit that same number, right? And the life cycle is longer, but it's much more worth it. Where I think about with Marketing Examine, like I want us to have our own, I don't even want to call it merch, our own fashion, our own stuff like that we put out. Yes, and the whole goal there is fans. The people that been along for the whole journey and they see me rocking shit into YouTube and they're like, hey, I want that. Those are the people I'm trying to sell it to. I'm not trying to have it be like one of the main revenue streams for the company. That is for, again, just fandom. I want people wearing our shit. I want people along their journey. When they wear it, they feel a certain way. They know there's a certain narrative around it. The same way you wear Represent 247, it's like I'm on a mission. I'm chasing something. With us, like our whole thing that we're trying to talk about is like learning is a lifestyle. So the lifestyle of learning, that is what we're trying to portray. That is the narrative that we're trying to put out there. And so when you wear our shit, it's like, you're a badass who's always going to continue to learn and be better and build shit. The whole idea that we're trying to push through our merch and, you know, again, we don't have it. So but in general is this lifestyle of learning. Learning is dope. Learning is cool. Being a smart fucker is a great thing, right? Like that's one thing I love about Jordan Peterson is like, it's a very good thing to be intelligent. Like there's nothing negative that comes with being intelligent. And you do that through continuous learning and making it a lifestyle, right? Versus a lot of people have a lifestyle of partying. A lot of people have a lifestyle of just training, whatever. It's also awesome for it to be Friday at 8 p.m. and you're just reading because you want to be better at something. You want to learn something so you could build something incredible in the oncoming days. And so if we can put out the best business content as a media company, and again, across all the different media channels, then we're encouraging that. And so when you wear our merch, you're just agreeing with the fact that that learning is cool. And that's the individual that agrees with that narrative.
A good example that just popped in my head of this kind of is like, remember when J. Cole, or I think he still does like the $1 and a Dream tour where like anyone could pay $1 and come? That's a perfect example where it's like, he could easily have siphoned $50, $100, $200 tickets, but instead he was like, yo, I'm going to give, it's the same thing with like people who make sneakers and give them at cost, right? It's like, I'm going to give the uniform to the soldiers for free. Because that's like, if you think long-term enough, they're everyone's a billboard, right? Everyone's 100%. A billboard for you. Makes a ton of sense.
I always like the idea of like if you are trying to build an army, you need soldiers. So why are you trying to make it like a hard way to find and acquire whatever soldiers? Like make it very easy for them to join your army.
Yeah. The army, our army, like the U.S. Army pays soldiers. It's not the other way around, right? You don't make soldiers buy in to then fight for you. So
100%.
But
there's always a mission, right? Like with the army, there's always a mission and an enemy and all those kinds of things that play into this. That's why, you know, where Apple is like, Apple did this, right? They looked at PC and was like, that is the enemy. And then everybody and even when you think about blue text versus green text, like in a very light way, you're finding an enemy. And like, because of that, you could build an army. So without the enemy, you can't build the army. And that's why even with us, it's like, dude, HBR is the enemy. In many ways, like just boring business content is the enemy. And we're going to completely change that.
Yeah. And the good thing is the embedded hatred for boring content or boring business content is already there, right? So it's like, you don't have to convince people that much that like HBR sucks. Like they already know.
Yeah.
So that half your job is done, right? You just have to find them and give them the better 100%. Alternative.
If a business could suck and do 300 million in revenue, then I think we'll do good.
Yeah. What do you, when you think about like, So obviously it's a long road.
Very long road, yeah.
The best roads are long. To be honest, I have a frame that you almost like want to set a goal so big that you can never hit it, so that your whole life you're just like chasing that one thing. So you don't ever go through the like, shit, we hit it, what do we do now? It's like, it's just such a big thing that you just grind. So
to me, sorry to interrupt you. To me, it's like, you're building the infinite ladder. You don't know where the ladder ends, but every day you're adding another step to that ladder that you need to take to reach that goal.
Yeah. And you don't really want it to end, right? Because like, even if, let's say fast forward, magic wand, 20 years, you build it, you sell it for $1 billion. 6 months later, you're going to be pretty bored. Like your brain is just too active to not do anything. So like why not just build the ladder forever and then just like reap the profits on the way up? I'm curious, most people would wonder, in the phase you're in right now, it's really easy to visualize what it will look like. And there's nothing about the playbook you laid out that would suggest you're not going to do it. So let's assume you do it. What right now though is the biggest struggle? Like when keeping up at night's a little extreme, but like when you're thinking about, God damn, we just can't figure this thing out right now. Like what is it?
I would say the biggest thing is like, right, the core of Marketing Examiner right now is the newsletter. And that's good and bad. The bad is, well, the good is we have a good product. The bad is anybody could have that same product right now. Beehive has made it so easy for anybody to launch a newsletter. And now in a world where when we first started, there was like 2 to 3 competitors, there's now 30. And so we're all competing for the same ad dollars. So the biggest struggle has been, how do we get away from ad dollars? I think it was something that I listened to on my first million. Austin Reef from Morning Brew was on with Sam Parr and Sean, obviously. And they were all talking about how their newsletters got acquired and all that shit. And Austin said something that was really interesting to me. He said, Sam, you had the best road and the clearest path to $1 billion company. We had the clearest and fastest path to $100 million company. Morning Brew built Morning Brew on the back end of ad sales, and that was their only revenue stream. The Hustle and Sam were building the Hustle, and then they were layering in Trends, which was $297 a year. Then they were layering in Growth Guides, which was going to be $2,000. And so they were going, ad sales, yes, that's awesome. But then we're also going to layer in a low ticket offer. We're also going to layer in a high ticket offer. And that is the best road to $1 billion versus just ad sales, because every month you're starting at zero. Even if you have to do its renewals, you're starting at zero. And so for us, it was finding out what was that next thing so that we can get away from starting at zero every single month, because bills don't start at zero. So it was like, we had to figure out and understand that the ad sales of it all is one part, but it can't be the only part, and that was a 6 to 9 month learning curve. Like even to the point of us adding in another salesperson, it was like, why aren't sales numbers going up? Right. So understanding that was a difficult thing, but I think we're on the come up of that. The other hard part is like juggling too many projects internally. Like we launch a YouTube show, we have the vlog, and it's a lot.
It's a shit ton of work.
It's a lot of work, and like you could come up with the best ideas, but it's hard to execute those great ideas. Like, I mean, the reason we were in LA was to shoot to shoot this YouTube show. It's 4 months later, and like the episode's kind of now just finalizing, because there was a lot of not issues is the wrong word, but like there was a lot of situations with the company that we were working with, and they're such a lean startup that a lot of things on their timeline changed. Right. And because of it, our timeline changed, but we have sponsors. And so it's difficult to navigate those waters. So getting out content is very difficult, like on a proper timeline. And then I think the other thing was just content actually in general. Like I knew, if you look at my page, I really started taking short form seriously 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
What has come in those 3-4 months has been astronomical to our company. And so there was the layer of, well, how do we get me out of the day-to-day shit so that I can go create? Because that internally, like I'm the only one that was going to be able to create those types of content, because it's like, it's my sauce, right? Like it's my thing.
Exactly.
And so that was the other thing that we're, and I retroactively speak about this, because it's like, I'm just trying to like connect the dots looking backwards, because that's the easiest way to do it. That was a very hard thing, was I shouldn't be in 15 meetings, because after 15 meetings, you're not going to be able to be creative. You're not going to be able to create a good video. And if we want to drive inbound and we want to drive all of these things, I got to be producing content. So really those three things was, first one, getting away from ad revenue and ad sales, and like that being the core. That can't be the core. You can't depend on that unless you have a team of fucking 15, 20, right? And they're all closing something every week. The second, as a lean team, you can't. And then the second was content at scale, and like building the proper ops before you have an idea. If you have an idea, make sure that you have the ops to execute that idea. And then the third was, as the founder or as the individual that's wears the creative hat and the content hat, figure out how to get yourself out of, and me specifically, get myself out of situations that make me remove that hat and barely let me put it on.
You know what's an interesting thing about the ad piece, like an interesting framework that I think is helpful, because I made this mistake the way I thought about it. Most people when they're starting out, like media, I think is one of the easiest business models for anyone to understand, because everyone's consuming media, right? So you're like, okay, Joe Rogan gets paid this huge deal from Spotify. Why? It's like, well, very obvious to understand. Spotify runs ads on the episodes, monetize the eyeballs. So someone who thinks they're smart or thinks they're savvy, as an aside, I'm realizing all of business is just like, you think you're smart and then you're like, fuck, I'm an idiot. And like, you just keep doing that over and over. So like for me, I was like, I was thinking, okay, perfect. Ads is a very predictable model. It's going to exist forever. You're going to have infinite advertisers. All you need to do is just increase ad inventory. So like if I'm writing a newsletter once a week, all I have to do is figure out, okay, how can I write it 4 times a week? And then I 4X my ad inventory, 4X my revenue. That's a very fundamental way of thinking that will make you lose, because the reality is what ends up happening is you're not actually thinking about what matters first, which is, what does the customer actually want? Does the customer want to read this 4 times a week? No, they love it once a week. So if you're stuck to the traditional ad model and the way of thinking, and the right thing for your product is once a week or twice a week, you should not go up to increase revenue from ads. So you're like, okay, well that's limiting. So what do I do? Now I got to launch something else. You could either, this is like the next rung on the stupidity ladder for me. Like the next thing is like, all right, I could launch 3 more content verticals and those each have ads. Perfect. But now you're like, I've got 4 things juggling. Each one's only getting 30% of my time. They're all bad now. And like ads don't come until the thing works. And most people have a bunch of things not working where the ads aren't coming. So you're like, this is just a treadmill to nowhere. And so like, as you level up your thinking, it's like, all right, ads, the way I think about it at least is like, if you have something working, you should take the ad dollars if it makes sense because it's free money, and just use the ad dollars to cover the team burn. But really, if you want to build something big, it needs to be owned products or services, like you said, productized services, products, whatever. And so a lot of these unlocks only come when you actually like launch something, do it for a while, see a little bit of growth, get a little bit of ad money, do the math, realize, oh shit, this is not going to sustain if I want a team, fail, launch something. Like you only realize it once you do it. But I think that's 100%. Hopefully a helpful frame for people.
And I am now at the level that you were talking about, because I did the 2 things you literally said. The first thing I did was I increased the frequency. I was going to try sending 3 times. Now we're at 2, but we're going to send Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Then you get to the point where it's like, well, fuck, I'm sending, but if there's nobody's buying, right? Like I didn't really build it out properly to sell it. Like there's no salesperson. How are we going to sell it? That was part 1. That was failure number 1. Then failure number 2 was we launched and we started building this up on the back end of like, hey, click here to subscribe, yada, yada. And we launched, I think it was at the beginning of this year or sometime last year. I don't remember, but it was like we had marketing examined, DTC examined, content examined, social examined, landing page examined. 5 fucking verticals. You know how many exist now? Marketing examined.
Yeah, 1.
You know what I'm saying? So it was like, it wasn't what the consumer wanted. Is there a world where we increase our verticals? Yeah, of course. When we have the infrastructure, when we have so much inventory, it's essentially just a segmented part of our list though. Like if we have marketing examined, but then we launch DTC exam, it's really just a segmented part of our list. There will obviously be different people on it, but in many ways, it's just now we're building another pocket of our community. And we do plan on doing that, but it's like, I want to build for marketing examine, I want it to be marketing examine, the media components. Let me use this hand so it's not fucking up the camera. Marketing examine, media components, community for those individuals, productized service for those individuals, and now it's the flywheel. Then we'll add in DTC examined or CPG, one of the 2.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same thing. It'll be, okay, we launched DTC examined. We're now building the community for DTC folks. And now there's a productized service for DTC folks. Okay, CPG. And you do the same thing for those three. And then, of course, like any company will start layering in other things. I don't know what those other things are now. This 3-point process and products is working very well for us, like and has completely, again, changed the game for us. But again, the only way I got there was to know, damn, I launched 5 verticals, hired writers, and I didn't even think about hiring a salesperson, and it failed, right? And it falls on it flat as its head.
We make the same. We're making the same mistakes, but really the only way to know this is to like do it, realize, be lean enough to, and like take the ego out of it, eat the L, and then go. It's not even an L really. It's just like a learning, but move on. But because the thing is, my brain thinks in frameworks. Like ads are 2 steps from working, where like you send the content. So you got to get someone to open the content, and then you got to get someone to click the ad for like that advertiser to be happy and come back. 2 steps.
Though. There's 3 though.
Yeah,
because now you have to get them to take some action on the back end of the ad.
Yeah.
And because we've sent 600-700 people to one ad in the past, but then if like not enough people convert, then they're like, dude, why did we get 6? But that and again, that part is usually on the advertiser. It's like, that's a terrible landing page. Like there's nothing I could do there. But naturally the way they think is quality people should convert, right? And so like there's 3 actions before it's successful, and that's a hard game to play.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is with products, it's 1 action, right? It's like you make the content, and if there's a direct response content for your own product, okay, fine, it's 2. But like most of your content just top of funnel, like, hey, I like this guy, I like what he says. Where's the product? People go find it themselves. It's like it's again like the route for you versus you're pulling them through. Yeah, dude, it makes a lot of sense. I think, we should definitely jam off pod, because I think in general, like my biggest takeaways of the last 6 weeks are, well, A, there's almost no one making business content with sauce, let alone making business content at all. But like with sauce, almost nobody, A. B, all these brands need to, like the trends of there's going to be more creators in the future than there are today. More of the attention is going to be through creators in the future than there are today. More brands are going to need to be able to weaponize organic content in the future than they are today. Like those trends are obvious and not going away, yet no one knows what they're doing. Like 100%. So it's just 100%. A huge gap. Dope.
And I agree heavy with the sauce part. Like, and this isn't me to take a shot at them, but I mean, I'm guessing you saw the Canva wrap shit, how they announced all their products.
Yeah, I didn't dive too into it, but it didn't grab my attention. We'll say that. So like, it
is just cringe, and I think that's the problem with like all this business content is the majority of it is cringe, and it's because people don't know what people want. And the crazy part is brands better than anyone should know what people want. Their whole business is built on knowing what people want, but they don't know how to talk to those individuals because they feel like and this happens because we have these conversations. They feel like the second that there's a camera or something is getting published, it has to be a certain way. You have to say a certain thing, or it is not right. It is not good, And I won't say the brand, but like we had an ad piece, right? And it crushed for them. It got them 200 or 300 emails. But then they were like, hey, why didn't we do this and this and this? And you have that moment where you like kind of just look at their brand account and you're like, yo, all of your videos, all of your content has 2 likes. 2 likes.
Yeah. Look at the data scoreboard.
Let me do me, right? Like this is performing better than all of your videos. Just trust me. And there's just a big misconception and misalignment with brands that they don't realize that the people that are building the brand are the same people like consuming the content that the brand is making, right? There's a disconnect between people and like these larger entities, and that disconnect destroys all creativity.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Why I think the biggest problem, why this is happening with every brand, it's because the people getting paid to direct the content have never made content.
Yeah.
That's it. Like that, and maybe if they made it in the past, like once for 6 months as like a proof point side project, and that's why they got hired. They're not making it now. It's like this shit changes so fast. Every brand, and this probably goes to what you guys are trying to sell as the product as service, and what I feel like should exist as well. Like every brand should have some fractional access to someone who's doing this in the trenches, but also can communicate to their leadership team. And almost none of those people exist because the overlap of like real creators and like real business understanding is very small. That's
100%.
and that's like that's where we live, right? That's where like our 5 friends that do that live.
Yeah. One of the great framings that I got from somebody that was actually one of the writers for one of our 5 verticals that we launched was, and this was for Social Exam, and she wrote, social media coordinators or social media managers will be the next CMOs. And the whole idea there was the CMOs aren't going to understand in 5 years or 3 years, whatever it was at the time, what hits and what resonates with an audience, and therefore they're not going to be able to lead ship. But the social media managers, the ones that were in the weeds, that understood social content and understood how to get attention and how to retain attention and all those things, are going to be the ones leading ship, because the way the world is, or the way that brand content and the world is shifting, attention is shifting, it's all leading towards organic and building an organic presence that funnels
100%.
into everything else. Like another thing that I went back on to your first question of what's a cheat code. It's a cheat code when you understand how organic could impact everything. If a piece of content resonates organically, that messaging better be applied to your email and your SMS and your landing pages, because the world is telling you, I'm consuming this and there's a reason I'm consuming it and engaging with it. Therefore, if I can take this and I could just rework it and repackage it for email and for SMS and for my landing pages, then you now have you essentially have a cheat code, because the starting ground is success versus testing to find success and wasting impressions. And a lot of that, again, just to bring it back, is this idea of the social media managers will be the CMOs, because they understand what's happening.
And that organic first approach, it's not like a strategy, it's the strategy. Like that is the fucking strategy. Like every brand should just cut everything and pivot to that immediately. And whoever they need to talk to like make that happen,
100%.
they should.
100%.
All right, I think we should leave it there. This was definitely a banger. If you guys are listening this far, you're obviously a super fan. Make sure to follow, subscribe. Also, I want you to plug, like, where's the best place? Obviously you have the website, but plug everything.
Sweet. So yeah, marketingexaminer.com. If like you want to get on the newsletter, you want playbooks, you want marketing playbooks, growth playbooks that are visual and tactical, and they're not going to waste your time, and they're not going to bore the fuck out of you. Essentially, the energy that you and I bring, hopefully in this podcast today, is like what you will get from our email. Then podcasts, anywhere you could search Sweat Equity. There may be a name change there. We have a conversation with a lawyer who trademarked the name Sweat Equity, so we're trying to figure that situation out. Then Alex Garcia _ATX everywhere else. And yeah, there's bridges to everything within those worlds.
I'm thinking the name Sweats Equity, where you just only wear represent sweats, I feel like could probably get around the patent issue. Yeah.
Dude,
all right, dope.
It was lame.
Dope. All right, thank you for joining.
Thanks,
See you guys
homie.
on the next one.